Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And I've only been spending about 5 minutes with these two gentlemen so far, and you definitely are having an opportunity to hear from the right people. I look forward to introducing you to Jason Haynes. He's the owner and lead consultant at Industrial Solutions, LLC of Arizona. Welcome, sir.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really thrilled that we have a chance to connect. I think we've been kind of toying with this idea for a couple of years.
Yeah, we have actually. And the biggest reason I had to cancel was for personal reasons and everything before. And then finally got an opportunity when Kendra reached out to me recently to go through that whole process.
So such a great shout out to Kendra, who's been helping us rekindle some of those opportunities that we talked about a while. And I too took a personal leave for almost a year and a half. So it's nice to be back and we're thriving and growing. And you were smart to bring with you Ian Rush today. Yes, who's an automation specialist with Summit Electric Supply. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to hear about both of your businesses and some of the neat collaboration and the way in which you're helping folks and manufacturing mainly. Am I right?
Yes, mainly manufacturing. We do warehousing, a lot of industrial, but mainly the manufacturing industry.
Yeah, so. and all those other things are kind of ancillary to that as well, right?
Yes.
So good. Yep. So if we could ask you, Jason, first to simply introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Industrial Solutions LLC, and then we'll have Ian do the same with regard to Summit Electric Supply. And then I want to hear the backstory and how this is all coming together. We got plenty of time to get connected.
So I'm Jason Haynes with Industrial Solutions. I do talk with my hands a lot. I know on podcasts and everything, it's you don't always see it. I know we're on video right now, but with Industrial Solutions, we're a lean consulting, training, and facilitation group that does a lot of work with process improvements within manufacturers. We can also work, as I said before, in other industries, but mainly our bread and butter is manufacturing. When I grew up, I was told not to go into manufacturing by my parents and my grandparents. And then I ended up going into manufacturing, loved it. And that's where I've gotten my passion for the manufacturing industry.
What does lean mean?
Lean is, to put it in simple terms, is process improvement. It's really just trying to pull out your dysfunction within your facility in order to improve your processes so you can, I always say it, you reduce the chaos in order to help people understand how to make improvements through their process.
Succeeding in a lean way, where there's not any excess expenditures, excess time spent, excess employees. It's lean.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Down to you're not always using machinery, as Ian. We usually bring in Ian when we need the machinery, but you're not always using that. You're using it, what you have on hand, the people you have on hand, in a lean process, in a lean way of making those improvements.
Yeah. Good. Before we go to Ian, I'm begging to know why mom and dad and grandparents said no manufacturing. Do you know this story, Ian?
I think a little bit. So a lot of it was back when I was growing up. Everybody knows, we was transporting jobs over to China, and a lot of the manufacturing jobs weren't the best paying jobs. I mean, it was rare to find a really good paying job. I even tell my dad today, a lot of those jobs aren't out there for the younger kids to be able to put them into those positions. So he had a great job, and I worked there for almost 10 years as far as being part of that process. But the jobs I had before that was bouncing from job to job, that maybe the top paying job was a $12 an hour job, which is great pay back then. But at the same time, it wasn't that great of pay, as far as you didn't have your retirement, you didn't have insurance, you didn't have stuff like that. So a lot of the reason they tried to keep us from going into manufacturing is because all the jobs were being shipped overseas, and they didn't want to see us struggle, wanted to see us go to college. A lot of the push was to go to college, get a degree, and everything like that. Now, I did get my degree, but it was through the manufacturer I worked for. They paid for my tuition reimbursement and all that. And that's the biggest reason they didn't really want me to go into manufacturing. Not that it wasn't a good field. It was just a lot of the jobs were dying at that time, and they just didn't want you to lose a job, have a family, and then be struggling the rest of your life.
Yeah. So, and you've been able to say, I'm able to do it all.
Yep. Yeah.
Manufacturing and leadership.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's really where I got my passion for, like I said, manufacturing, my passion for leadership, and understanding the people at the front lines, getting to build relationships with those people. And I grew up in sports. There was camaraderie in sports, and then you get into those positions at the front lines, and there's that camaraderie and getting to know the people, their talents, their skills. And another reason I did get into lean was, as everybody knows today, we're having a talent shortage, whether that's skilled workers or frontline workers. A lot of what I was trying to do was come in, show that we could save time in your process to be able to teach those people at the front lines a different trade or a different skill and give them that time. And a lot of my friends back home have those skills, but say they had a kid and they need to go to a job and take care of that kid, and they're constantly working. They don't have time to go to there. So you're trying to save them time within the facility in order for them to be able to train those people to be mechanics, to work on the machines that like Ian puts into place, or be able to be electricians or anything that helps, or be in leadership for that matter. I mean, which is another skill shortage that we have as far as leadership, because a lot of people are thrown into the position and they just, they get to a point where, and I was one of those, you get to a point where you're so overwhelmed and so busy all the time that you stressed out all the time. And when one of your employees comes to ask for something, you don't have time. And that's what really lean is all about, is having that time and the respect for people and being able to provide that to those people at the front line.
Joe Puz had his show with us for almost 6 years, and it was project management office hours. And one of the things I always loved about what he said was that people often end up in leadership as an accidental manager. Mm-hmm. You're so good at your job. Hey, you ought to take over this team. And now they're doing what they were trained to do and expected to, be and lead and train and everything. So you're helping alleviate some of that confusion and making sure that it's streamlined.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. I can't wait to hear more. However, right now we're going to pause and we're going to hear from Ian. Tell us about yourself and Summit Electric Supply.
Sure. So Summit Electric Supply is known around the Valley for, being an electrical supply house. So every electrician in the Valley has bought something from them over the years: wire, conduit, switchgear, so on. I was brought in as to lead a new initiative to go into automation specifically. So, I mean, we're a distributor at the end of the day, so we don't provide the solutions necessarily. We provide the components to execute those solutions. And one of the things that makes me effective is that, I am a degree holding engineer. I have a bachelor's, two bachelor's degrees, one in automotive engineering and one in manufacturing engineering. I have 8 years on a factory floor at companies like 3M and Wabash National. So I'm very familiar with implementing lean. I've seen it done well. I've seen it done poorly. I've implemented it with tremendous success. And in the process, I've been able to work on a lot of projects that have introduced me to technologies and subjects that allow me to now, as a consultant, so to speak, I can dig up opportunities. And, I have a Rolodex of what I call integrators. These are individuals who are experts on a particular subject of automation, usually 2 to 3. Like, one person will have that expertise. And so I can connect the customer with that individual and help them, scope out a project based on hopefully some lean conversations they've had that have filtered these ideas to the top. And then I have the tools, like literally in my warehouse, to execute that job. So it's like, oh, you need that? I got that right here, So I have a functional knowledge of the components. I'm always up to date on what technologies are coming out. There's always something new to learn, but, I spend my time making sure I'm very familiar with what's currently available, what's coming, but more importantly, some, like, when people think automation, they always come asking for a robot, and I love robots. They're so much fun to put up and watch them do their thing. They're a great tool, but they're not the only tool. They either make perfect sense and it's a great idea, whether it's safety or like an ergonomic thing where someone's doing some really awkward position that makes them sore or whatever, injures them. But so they're either a great solution or they're a terrible solution and just a tremendous waste of money. And so, what I enjoy is that's always like the catchphrase coming in. And I love, I guess, doing a button hook and getting someone like, all you need is a conveyor. All you need is this quick, it's a lot easier than what you think it is.
Helping them understand that.
Yeah. And of course, so that's me in a nutshell. That's what Summit Electric Supply is providing is, they already have the network, they already have the warehouse, and they already have the tools to, get people things when they need them. And then, so that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. Well, you left out a couple things. So you grew up in a military household and you actually served in the military for us.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was born on Camp Pendleton, California. My dad did 23 years in the Marines. I grew up on Camp Pendleton. And then when it came time to serve, the recruiter didn't have to ask twice. I shipped out. I remember being in boot camp and being able to point to where my house was when I was a kid from Edson Range. So I'm very familiar with the Marine Corps. Spent my young adult life as a Marine.
Thank you.
And a funny thing is what about a week ago you met a guy that I'd met before through our networking group that we do that actually served with Ian.
Lavazzo.
That's incredible.
And
it just happened.
World.
It was ended up being a small world. You just happened. Wow, that's fantastic.
Because I remember asking Aaron about it, and then he's like, "Yeah," he goes, "I think I know that guy." So I showed him a picture. He's like, "Yeah, I served with him."
Yeah,
that's incredible. And bilingual as well.
Yes, I'm fluent in Spanish.
And how did that come about?
So I lived in South America for 2 years, and obviously learned the language while I was down there, and so I'm bilingual.
Incredible. Yes. And I meant to ask you before we went to Ian, you said you were an athlete growing up. What sport? I have some ideas in mind, but I might be wrong.
So what ideas do you have? I mean,
I'm thinking football, rugby.
Nope. I was actually
wrestling.
I did wrestling. I did wrestling from 4 years old up to the 11th grade. My dad was big into wrestling, loved wrestling. I still love wrestling. I don't know if you guys watch much of the NCAA tournament or anything like that, but I was upset this year when Spencer Lee actually lost in the semifinals. So I was probably more upset than his mom that tore up his glasses or her glasses.
No.
So it was he's a great wrestler to watch, but I wrestled, ran cross country, which cross country is a touchy subject because it was one of those sports. I wanted to play football. My mom wanted me to run cross country. At the time, you do what your parents told you.
I wanted to play drums. My mom said girls don't play drums, so I played the piano horribly.
Exactly.
Same.
And then baseball, which baseball was my biggest sport. And that's where I've met a lot of people. And it's funny. The thing is I met my wife through a guy I played baseball with who lived down here with her and introduced us both. And that's how that all started. So I
mentioned my 15-year-old earlier, my youngest, he just became a sophomore yesterday. Okay. And he, as a freshman, placed in state for his second year of wrestling. So he started in eighth grade and fell in love with it. And he placed state, I think, 128 weight class.
Okay.
And then is also playing baseball. He's been a ball player his whole life. So it's really been fun to watch him, kind of find this new love, but also keep this other passion going. So I love that. Great. All right. So I want to hear about the networking group. But before we talk about that, tell me how the two of you got connected and why that's such a rich relationship and how that's working for you.
So really how the two of us got connected was Ian reached out through LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn. It's where being a solopreneur, that's where a lot of my marketing and advertisement comes from, and kind of getting people to understand what I'm talking about. Cause sometimes I get wordy and I probably get wordy today, but it's one of those things where I post on there. Ian reached out to me. Did we meet for lunch or coffee? Either or, it doesn't matter. But we met for lunch or coffee, and we just hit it off from then on, and basically bounced ideas. And I started inviting him to the networking group we were speaking about. And he just showed up there, and I started introducing him to different places that I was working in or had met, but I couldn't help them, but knew somebody that could help them. So it's one of those things where it's I use, as they say, use your network to get jobs done, even if you're not getting in there and getting business, you're still helping those businesses out, and you're a good resource for those businesses. And that's really where we hit it off. He likes baseball, likes sports. I'm not a Marine. I won't kid. I probably never could have been. My parents were not against the military, but always told us never to go in the military as well. But unlike your parents,
we're grateful for the families that have said
yes,
that.
We are. Yeah. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And then love coffee. Both of us do. Love, like I said, sports, and then just hit it off as far as talking lean and industry and everything.
That's so important. I love that you're sharing that. Relationships are everything in business. Yep. At the end of the day, deals are made and opportunities are created because we connect with people.
Yes.
And we always find a way to connect, right? I say to people when they come in, sometimes we pair people up in some of my shows that don't know each other. And I've never been worried about that because just through listening to each other, we're going to find common themes.
Yes.
And maybe there's, we never see each other again, but at least we've left knowing a little something more about somebody. And in this case, a lot of great connections. How long has it been that you guys have been working side by side?
3 years.
Yeah, it's been around 3 years. Because it was right around 3 years.
Yeah, and has it been about that long since you and your family have been back, or a little bit longer?
Yep.
Okay.
So we moved. We used COVID as our excuse to get home.
Right.
So I kind of got stuck in the Midwest, working the jobs I mentioned before. It's hard to walk away from a company like 3M. So I was like, I want to go home, but I don't want to leave. COVID gave me the excuse to come home, and I swear I met Jason almost immediately.
Yeah.
Obviously COVID was a challenge. The role I had before this, I was more or less an application engineer for a small integrator, one of the people I was talking about. So that company specialized in warehousing optimization, mm-hmm. and so I was helping design like full warehouses, automation, the whole like vending machine type warehouse thing. And obviously with COVID, it was a struggle to get in and talk to anybody, right? So we kind of joined forces. I have a very strong lean background. I'm not really a good sales guy. I mean, I'm an engineer who can like hold a conversation without overheating. And so I do all right, but I'm more of a natural conversation guy, networking. I really just like to talk solutions and help people work through them, even if I'm not the guy to do it. I have enough experience with lean. I've worked with enough projects. I've done projects anywhere from $4,000 to $400,000 to $4 million. Like I've done projects at all the different levels. And I can hold my own in those conversations, regardless of who I'm talking to. And I really enjoy the process that he teaches, because it's a very systematic way to arrive at the needs. And then you can go about looking for solutions. And my moat is I'm good enough at what he teaches to get there. And my moat is like having solutions in my back pocket, or people to call, pick up the phone. I know who to call and then, hey man, like this is what I'm looking at. Like, what is it that I need? And they'll be like, oh, I'll send them a picture or a text or whatever. And I'll have $1 million worth of salaries telling, like, literally helping me solve a problem.
Incredible.
So that's where Jason is incredibly powerful. Cause he's introduced me. You guys had AIB on here before.
Yes.
David Steinman.
Yes.
So
David,
Jason introduced me to him.
He has his own show. Did you know that?
Yes, he does. He's amazing.
Show. I haven't listened to it, but I knew he had his own show.
He's one of the neatest people in my life. Yeah. And it's been 2 years, I think, that we've had David changing the perception of blindness one conversation at a time, and with a sponsor with AIB. Yeah.
His dog's name is Rufus.
Yes.
So shout out to Rufus.
Yay.
That guy's a hoot.
I love it.
It's amazing. I meant not to get too off topic, but I love, he points out with disabilities, a lot of companies say that they're inclusive. But one of the things he points out, he'll just point out very obvious stuff like you're inclusive, but this application is, not able to be filled out by someone who's blind or visually impaired. Yeah.
And it could easily be shifted so that it can.
Yeah. It's like you say you're inclusive, but like I can't even fill out an application at your company without help. So I love his show. He points out very easy. It's stuff that we can all work on. We can all help with. Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah. We're very proud to have him. Yeah. So I didn't know that connection. So I'm super thrilled. In fact, he just came. He was here last week for his most recent episode. And then the week before that, we had a barbecue. Okay. And he came and hung out with us with Rufus. Yeah. It was great. So shout out to our buddy, David. That's awesome. Mm. How were you introduced to lean in the beginning?
So to be honest with you, the biggest reason I was introduced to lean, so I was introduced to lean a long time before I even knew what lean was. Okay. But how I was introduced to lean, I was flying back to the East Coast with my wife and read a book called Lean Thinking by, I can't remember the two authors' names, but it's a popular book. And read it. And at the time I was working in a startup, and I was completely stressed out all the time, had the tension headache, all that kind of stuff going on, and couldn't figure out how to better the process to help the people. Because I originally went into leadership to help people out, to help them grow. Like I said before, help people at the front lines that had the talents to be maintenance and electricians and leaders be able to grow and do that kind of stuff. But getting into this position, I didn't have time for that. Well, I found lean, and that's when I started implementing the processes as far as putting it in there. And I realized it wasn't really always to help the people at the front lines, and it wasn't always to help you affect your bottom line. It was more the tools and stuff were to help you. It's just like a carpenter using a hammer. You take the tools such as waste elimination or 5S or anything like that is to help you so you can help your people at the front lines. once you start to say you implement a 5S program to where you eliminate all barriers and you standardize the processes, you're sitting there to uncover the issues that are going on, such as such as how the flow through the company's going and where your bottlenecks are at, and you use those tools to put those visually out there, because it's easier for people to see stuff visually. When there's too much chaos going on, nobody sees anything. I mean, everybody's just trying to go as fast as they can to be able to get to that number. And once you start implementing stuff such as your 5S or your waste elimination or your one-piece flow or value stream mapping, you start to uncover those areas that you want to fix and everything. And a lot of times those areas that you need to fix aren't visual. So once you start uncovering them, that's when you start to see them, and you can start fixing the actual problems instead of the just kind of the Band-Aid problems that happened every day, that an employee might smash their thumb or something in something, and they come along and you hurry up and put a Band-Aid on it. Where once you start putting the tools into place, you're able to uncover those problem areas, and then you can start fixing those areas. And that's really how I got into lean. Was I was so stressed out, and I'm like, this is perfect. This is what I really want, and this is what I need. And I started putting it into place and uncovering those problems, and then started fixing the problems that need to be fixed. So that's where I got into lean.
And I'm thinking from a culture perspective for the companies that you work with and the companies that you support. I think we're all kind of wired this way. When you start to solve problems, even the problems they weren't even aware were bottlenecks, don't people get a little bit more excited about their jobs?
Yeah.
And then want to chip in and help? And hey, if we solve this, can we do this? Or do you find that people just
I would say that, I mean, lean, I think it was Jocko Willink. I'm sure more people have said it, but it's like, amateurs talk tactics, pros talk strategy. And
love that.
when with lean, like, I mean, it's like going back to the drawing board. You take a team of Navy SEALs or any elite, group, they get to be incredible on when they're at the tip of the spear because of all the work that went in before. They don't just show up because they're strong or fast and just be good. Like, there's so much that went on before, so that when they're under the gun, so to speak, or when it's time to do the job, everyone is on point. And when you watch those teams work, they're actually quite quiet, calm, collected. Like what to the rest of us would be a very stressful situation, it seems very calm and collected. And it's because of all the training and practice that went into it. And it's a culture of continuous improvement. And that's what lean really teaches. Like, it's why Toyota builds the most reliable car on the planet. Like, no one disputes that. There are better cars and there are way more fun cars to drive. There are faster cars. There are more comfortable cars, but there's no more reliable car in a given class than a Toyota. And that's lean is how Toyota got there. Other companies, other automakers have tried to mimic Toyota, but their culture is so different that they bring in, I mean, they even spied on, in the early days, they spied on Toyota. And they would come back and try to implement the same ideas. And it's like, with one person screaming loud on the floor, it doesn't change the culture. And that's why lean sort of works some places. Other places it's a joke. It's a 4-letter word and people treat it like one. In other places like Toyota and Boeing, and places that are known for quality and for doing not just good things, amazing things, top class things, they all lean isn't even sometimes I don't even use the word lean. It's just this is the way things are done. Yeah. And everyone just knows from training before, just that's just the culture here. They may not know that it's 5S or they may not know the name for the 8Ds or 5Ys or whatever, but they know that tool,
and that's more important
than knowing what it's called.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's they don't need to know the tools, or they don't need to know the name of the tools, because if you show the person respect and you show them that you're willing to have their input and have them be part of the process, that's when you get that buy-in and you get them people that want to help you out and everything. Not everybody's going to, but most of the time, usually once you start to get to that point, you get where you're showing respect for people. And that's one of the pillars of Toyota, as far as having, or lean, as far as having that respect for people and having that in there. So they don't always have to know what you're doing as far as the tools and what you're implementing. As long as they understand the gist of it, they'll be willing to help you out and willing to to be part of the process. Like, and I know this is attributed to John Maxwell and Theodore Roosevelt, but it's always nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
It's
And
so
that's
true,
really
though.
what they're looking for, is that person that's showing that they care about you and everything.
As evidenced by, again, our conversation before we went on air, the two of you I was asking, how do you two know each other? Some of those preliminary conversations, and the amount of, excuse me, the amount of times that you guys in a short few minutes were talking about how if you can't help a company, you're pointing over here at Ian, and Ian's doing the same, not only with you, but other people, because you care. And when people know that, they're going to keep that in mind, even if you weren't able to be of service to them at some point.
Yes.
Maybe they'll swing back around. Let's talk about that networking group. Is this a networking group that you established? Does it have a name? And who's showing up there? And is there room for more?
So as of right now, we don't have a name. I know we've kind of toyed with names before, but it's more geared towards business to business, working within industrial manufacturing, and construction, or anything that's within industrial that kind of has that framework, because we work with pretty much those same type of companies, because there's not a lot of groups out there as far as networking that deal with those places. And the biggest reason I formed it, I used to be what we call the gatekeeper, or the person at the front door that told the salesperson that was coming in the door, I don't know, my manager's standing right beside me. I go, I don't know when he'll be back or she'll be back. He went out to lunch. It's only 8 o'clock. But he takes a long lunch. So it's one of those. So it's one of those things where it was like, how can we get into places and help each other out? Because a lot of, and especially during COVID, there was definitely nobody letting anybody in to their doors unless you worked there or you was a full-time employee or something like that. So the networking group was really formed to help us network and bounce ideas off each other, customers off each other, introductions, and help each other out. And we're, I think the last group was 8. I've had up to 35. We've, and one of the other things was also to try to go into facilities such as, and I'll let Ian talk on that does robotics and everything, so the people in our network group have that person in their toolbox and know somebody that they may be able to introduce one of their customers to.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that's come from that is, you're speaking about the Delta Technologies demo. So they're right here behind Tempe Diablo Stadium. I'm a huge fan of what they do. I don't work for them, but it's a joy to bring customers in to see what they do. I've done a lot of robotics work in my past, but I've never come across an integrator that had an actual demo lab, somewhere you could actually like, hey, I'm making this cup, I'm printing on it, and I want to just like see if the humans are doing this. That's really repetitive. They all have sore shoulders. I wonder if a robot could just do the ins and outs. Maybe the person could be the quality checker, or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, send me a box of these cups, and we'll actually like just we'll work up. Maybe it's the wrong size robot. We'll like kind of give you the gist, a proof of concept. So someone is buying on like actual proof that it works versus, I've literally seen, $500,000 spent on like napkin sketches of like what they say a robot can do. Eventually it of course there are drawings in the end, but it's like in terms of when the ball gets rolling on a project, they'll like just like go to the races off of a napkin sketch. Oh, the robot could do this and it does this. And then, it's $100,000 robot. Why is the project $500,000? Because the scope wasn't clear. And like they didn't use any tools to come up with exactly what they were trying to get the robot to do. So once they start seeing, every time someone sees it doing something, like, oh, what if it did this? What if it did that? And now all of a sudden the robot's trying to do 15 different things. And the point is that like the original benefit would have paid for itself in a week. But because the scope creeped for months and months and months and months, or maybe even years, by the time they actually get around to solving it, like they no longer need the benefit, or it's cost so much money and time that everyone's like, I'm done with this.
Or somebody else has done it cheaper, faster, and more effectively.
So I don't know if you've seen the article. I think either this week or last week it came out, and a lot of guys in my lean community are writing man bites robot. Toyota's actually kind of shifting back towards hiring men on, or people on, as far as replacing robots, because sometimes, like Ian's saying, sometimes the scope has gotten so large and they don't either implement it fast enough, or it gets to the point where the projects change from the time of the beginning to when they finally implement it, that the robot or machinery for that matter isn't flexible enough for the process that they have within their facility. And then they buy this piece of the machinery or robot, put it in there, and it doesn't do what they need to do. And they basically have a person running the robot that you're paying a robot. Well, you paid for the robot and you're paying a person to do that job as well. So, so Toyota's kind of shifting back. They're not to 100% going away from robots. And Elon Musk as well is doing the same thing currently, as far as not shifting completely away from like an automated process, but has realized that you have to have those people there to have those ideas, because robots usually not going to talk back to you and tell you this is going wrong or that's going wrong. Yes, they're easy to manage, but at the same time, you still need those ideas from people from the outside. And if you're going to have a 24-hour automated process, you're still going to have a person there that's going to have to watch over it to give you ideas as far as the problems and issues that you're having throughout that process. But yeah, Toyota's actually kind of shifting away, not away from, but back to men to kind of work with the robots, not completely replacing men with robots.
And that goes, sorry,
No, go ahead.
that goes back to my original statement about like, you know, everyone comes in, like, I mean, automation equals robots. For most people, automation equals robots. And that's where, like I said, where I find a lot of strength, and I enjoy the process, because they're cool to see. I'm not denying that. I'm a total nerd. I love them. But it's like, if they're not a good fit, sometimes it's like, yeah, you can do that. Or like, what if you just reorganize the assembly station altogether? Like, you spend $2,500 instead of $250,000.
Wow.
You spend $2,500 on like a new workstation that's like where everything's everything's like ergonomic heights, everything's in order. There's like little lights that come on, tell you like step 1, step 2, step 3. It's like, pull this fastener out, put it in here, pull this spring out, put it here. The whole thing's organized. Now the person is, you know, it's adjustable height, and maybe there's a conveyor with a tray that like brings them like their, you know, like the assembly line, but it's bringing them kind of semi-finished stuff. They do their bit, they put on another conveyor that goes. So like, you can do that. A lot of times it's way less complicated and it's scalable. If all of a sudden the product changes, it doesn't change the system.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's still a conveyor, still a tote. Maybe the tote changes size or something, but like there's so many other tools to leverage in that conversation that, you know, by all means, call me about a robot, but like, I'm probably going to try to steer you away from it unless if it's obvious, of course. But that's what I'm saying. That's where the tools come in handy. That's why we work really well together. It's like, when I come across, I mean, I'm equipped to do that process, but I'll get fired if I'm like spending all my time helping a customer like go through the process of defining a project. I can help, but it's like, when I get to that wall where it's like, you guys can't afford me to, like, you know, so I call my buddy Jason, like, he'll come in and he'll work through this with you. And then when you have your answer, then, you know, I definitely have the tools to get you there. But I can't spend the next 3 weeks working with you guys on this, you know, on a Kaizen event or whatever. So that's where we really work well together, and where, you know, the ideologies go hand in hand. And honestly, it's why, you know, we've continued to succeed, is because people, like a lot of companies at the enterprise level, a lot of companies struggle with that, like the buy-in at the lower levels. A lot of the leadership, our finance backgrounds, they don't have any sort of, you know, like the tangible, practical experience on the floor. So getting them to talk lean and think lean is kind of, you know, square peg round hole. So again, that's where Jason comes in. Like, you know, he can help convert that ideology. And if you're really, you know, if you're at the top and you're not going to learn anything new, then you need to bring in a team that can get your team to think that way. Even if you don't think that way, you need your team to.
And I'm not sure if you run into this situation. A lot of times the situation I've always run into when it's like that is, it's what I was saying earlier. I was so busy, I didn't have time to help my people out. Well, a lot of times it's like, you go in and you start talking to, say, the plant manager, the production manager, or a CFO or CEO. And sometimes they look at it and they think it's a good idea, but they don't have time to research it enough to where, because they're so busy doing the work and not understanding what needs to be done. And they don't always have the time to sit down and have meetings with you. They don't have time to be able to go out there and take care of those problems. So it's almost like that cartoon with the two cavemen that had the square wheel and the one behind them with the round wheel, where he's like, I got a suggestion. We can't stop. We're too busy right now.
And he rolls past them.
So it's one of those things where, and I always talk about this busyness, whether it's in work or your everyday life. Like a lot of some of the problems we're having in the world today, sometimes I think it's because we've gotten so busy with things that we don't have time to stop and take care of our kids, and we don't have time to stop.
Think we have time.
Yeah, we don't think we have time because we've got other things going on, and we have to be busy all the time. And the same goes for within work. And a lot of times I grew up on the front line, so it's one of those things where I've heard what them guys, the front lines, are saying. And a lot of times they're trying to say it loud enough that the people in the office, but the office people are usually so busy that they're not really hearing what they're saying. So they get, and don't get me wrong, going out and buying lunches and doing stuff like that is great, but that only goes so far. Yeah. It's when you start showing that, as I said before, that nobody cares until you show that you care as far as what you're thinking and everything. So you want to start showing them that you care, going out to the front line, seeing what their problems are, and start to fix those problems. That way they see that you actually want to make an improvement, and then they start buying in and going, just like your kids. It's once you show that you care about them, they start doing the things that you care about and showing that they're appreciative of what you're I should say preaching and everything, or trying to teach them and everything. So it's not just in the manufacturing and in the work world as far as that goes.
It's a way of being.
Yep. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the role of automation and the future. What else should we be thinking about looking at? And you talked about how we're kind of coming back to making sure that, people are part of this as well. It's not just automation, but what else should we be aware of as it relates to that?
I would say, it is very much the future, but IoT industry of things. So, everyone's probably heard the term preventive maintenance, but the future will be more predictive maintenance. So say you have a machine and there's one bearing that wears out. Maybe right now you're replacing it every 6 months because historically it fails after 7 or 8, right? And you have a planned shutdown, you change it out because it's obviously more cost effective to have a planned shutdown than have it break in the middle of the process, right? In the future, like right now, you can buy that same bearing with sensors in it that will tell you when it starts to vibrate and let you know, hey, this bearing is beginning to fail. So you can go from like this planned thing where you might have got 2-3 more months out of that component if you knew what its status was, almost like your car kind of telling you when something's going.
And that's where automation can really be helpful.
Yeah. So that can be as simple as it just throws out a light. Yep. Or it can literally shoot you an email saying, hey, this bearing is out of tolerance or out of spec. It's time to schedule a replacement. And you can go as far as, if you program it as such, you literally say, it sends you the email and it lets you know, hey, here's the PO. I already cut it. It's already been ordered. It's on its way. Yep. And so, and like, it'll schedule the time to do it'll literally do the whole thing for you. So you made like each person involved in that process extremely way more efficient.
And again, preventative versus reactionary. Mm-hmm. Who is the groundwater company we had on, Daryl? Do you remember? Can you look that up for me? Because I'm remembering our conversation with them where everything is preventative and they're studying it and they know how to. I mean, it's a great interview. If you want to go listen to it, one we can figure out who it was. Yeah. But it's the same conversation. Being preventative and proactive is so much easier now with technology versus reactive.
And that's the funny thing is the lean in the Toyota way that's basically what it was, is to be more preventative than reactive, rather than doing the Band-Aid and the firefighting as a lot of us in manufacturing call it. It was more the tools were to uncover your process and show so you could fix the problems as you've seen them arise. I mean, Toyota is notorious for, and you tell this to anybody that works in manufacturing anywhere, they're notorious. If there's a problem that happens, they shut the line down and fix the problem as it comes through. Where a lot of places you look at them, you tell them, hey, if you get a problem, you need to shut your line down and fix the problem and then start back up and produce parts. A lot of people will look at you like you got a third leg growing out of your head or something. So it's one of those things where, yes, they're notorious for the whole preventative maintenance, but they didn't ever call it that as far as.
But the difference, going back to the culture, is that like at Toyota, they don't just stop it, fix that one part and move on. They stop it, they fix the process.
Yes. Yeah.
They take that one moment to fix the process, because if they don't, then that same thing will occur over and over and over again. And if you amateurize or you add up all those occurrences, those cost way more than just taking an extra 15 minutes to figure, okay, why did this fail? How did it fail? Blah, blah, blah. Like, what is it? Like, was it what? And you're pointing at the process rather than the person, which eliminates the personal. It's like, I did what was in the instructions, and this is what happened. So you can, like, no, everyone's emotions are out of it. You focus on the process. You say, okay, we need this thing, or maybe we need this part, or we need this new component, or whatever the solution is. But then when they start up the line again, they didn't just fix the one part, they fixed the process for the future.
Yes.
So that's the difference, and why, you know, they can, their vehicles continue to get more profitable every year. It's like they don't just sell cars and make billions, they make more billions each year.
Yeah.
Is that making the same Corolla? You look at a Camry, Corolla, Tacoma, Tundra, like they remodel them like every 15, 20 years. Otherwise, it's like, here's a facelift, here's some new lights. Like it's the same car for 15, 20 years. And no one bats an eye at it. Whereas like other automakers, every single year, it seems like they have to refresh to keep you interested.
I never knew that about that. That's fascinating. Matrix New World is the name of the groundwater company. Really encourage you to go and listen to that conversation. There might even be some opportunities for some connections.
Okay.
But again, this thinking around being preventative and letting automation really take what they're doing at a whole new level.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Well, that's what you're saying with automation and people, at least with the preventative maintenance, it's working together instead of putting a machine in place of a person. It's using both to work together to better the process, rather than just throwing a machine at the problem, or in the past you would just throw people at the problem rather than having enough people to do the process. You just threw a bunch of people at the problem and got the problem done.
Yeah. Share a little bit around returning manufacturing to the USA. Sometimes that conversation comes up in our show that I do with Arizona Technology Council. Steve Zelstra and I do that show together and have for years. And, you know, it's an important conversation. And again, I think COVID really helped us go, oh boy, we need to do that. So you're the experts. Tell me.
This is something that's very dear to my heart. Like I said, I lived in South America for a couple of years, 08 to 10. And when I came home, I was basically gone for the recession, so to speak. I came home to a very dire situation with my family. I was pretty brokenhearted about it, obviously. You know, I came home to a far worse situation than I left. And I came home, you know, like everyone was sitting around complaining about the situation. And I looked at myself and thought, you know, I'm going to help create a solution to the problem. What I saw was a lack of quality jobs, like gainful jobs. I knew friends that were, you know, their dad, like we all have the rich kid growing up. Everyone has that rich friend, right? And like you look at what their parents did for a living or whatever. And it's like, there's a difference between like you hear jobs. Well, it's one thing to hire a bunch of people. It's another thing to hire people and like give them jobs that they're proud of, that they can raise a family on. Like forget about Bentleys and Rolls Royces and you know, Breitling watches. Like think about just being able to raise your family, you know, have a couple cars, go on a trip once a year, like have a you know, middle-class life, working a good job that's safe, that you come home from, like, you know, maybe you're a little sore, but like you're not beat up, like you're gonna live a long, healthy life. And like when I looked at that problem, I saw like all the people who did well were the ones who could, you know, like, you know, not move or make an adjustment, and you know, they had a skill or a trade that they could bring to the table, or the people who were more efficient with their time. And when I looked at, you know, myself and my skill set, you know, I knew I was a nerd. I knew I had a strong technical background. I grew up in a garage, you know, slinging wrenches. I was very familiar with how stuff worked. I'm the kid when something broke, even I would take it apart, even if it wasn't made to go back together. I would take it apart to understand, you know, what it was, at least find what broke. So I had that brain. So, you know, I put myself to study. I went, you know, I went to Minnesota to school solely so I could focus and not get distracted. And, you know, my whole reason for going was to come back, I mean, to Arizona originally, and now it's just America as a whole. Like at the time I was young, whatever, Arizona, whatever. But like I really saw this vision of like, you know, bringing manufacturing back to the US, because in my mind, I don't see another industry where regular people who aren't calculus geniuses, I'm talking about the finance industry, like regular people can have a great job doing something that's valuable and meaningful that they're proud of. And manufacturing, in my mind, is the only place where that can happen. It's the only place where there's enough money, there's enough cash flow to justify higher salaries. And the way you get there is through automation. You automate the mundane, the redundant, the boring, the dangerous tasks. So people want to work there, which means you get higher quality, more qualified individuals in the job. And you leverage the automation to make sure that that person is doing what makes them best, which is their brain. Robots only do, or all automation only does what it's told to do. It does one thing over and over again perfectly. But if there's any sort of deviation, it's not going to do it. And that's where humans will never be replaced, is that the intuition, the ability to problem solve, decision make, So that's my vision in terms of like, and now that I'm here back in Arizona, like I see it for Arizona with all the manufacturers that are moving here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a strong personal like interest in participating in that process and making sure that Arizona is the crown jewel of manufacturing in the US. It's somewhere that every company that thinks, hey, we're going to build a new factory, where should we start? I want Arizona to be on the top of that list every single time, no matter who it is.
How much do you work with Arizona Commerce Authority for helping them place manufacturing companies outside the greater Phoenix area? Are you guys, are you involved in, do people reach out to you at that capacity and say, hey, where should we be?
Not yet. I participate with the MEP.
Yep.
What is MEP?
Manufacturing Extension Partnership.
Okay.
They're part of that.
They're part of the ACA.
Right? Okay.
Okay.
Which that's the funny thing with the MEP is that when I first went into manufacturing, it was an unknown entity, not just here in Arizona. They have one MEP in every state. They're part of the NIST, or National Institute, and I might botch this up, but I want to say it's the National Institute for Science and Technology out of Washington, D.C. So basically what they do is help bring people, if they can't handle it within their area, they bring people such as myself or Ian into the facility that they're working in, so to help that area out. Mm-hmm. And like I said, they're not the largest known entity, and one thing I'd love them to be out there as far as more of a known place for manufacturers to help. I believe they've gotten stronger here in Arizona in the last couple of years compared to what they were probably 5 years ago. But I believe there was stuff that was going on, and manufacturing 5 years ago here in Arizona wasn't as big as it is now. So it's grown tremendously as far as the manufacturing here in Arizona. It's one of those things where a lot of people came here due to either moving here from China or moving here from other states, as far as the incentives and stuff like that within the state that have helped them come to this state. And a company I worked for before, the reason they moved here, so they had a facility in Ohio and they have a facility here in Arizona, and then they're a Canadian-based company. They moved to Arizona because Arizona is a central point, basically the two largest economies in the nation of Texas and California, and the shipping lanes coming out of here are better than going to those any other state here in this area. So it's basically just a central point in the middle that helped them have cheaper shipping to those places. So
not to mention our great lifestyle.
Great lifestyle.
But yes, geographically makes a lot of sense. And then we've got a lot of great selling points as to why people should, raise their families here and bring their companies here.
The
Very
weather
good.
And
all that.
lifestyle.
Yeah, good. And what brought you to Arizona? Do I remember you? Did you share that?
Well, you can't shovel sunshine is what I've always been told. But it was actually, I met my wife and I moved down here with her.
So say that. Yeah, very good.
It's okay. You came here for the baseball,
For the baseball. Well,
Did you come here for spring training originally?
I've been here for spring training since 2011. So yeah, it's really one of the things I like to do. Yeah. I've kind of shifted more towards fall ball now because there's not as many crowds there. The fall ball's
it's cooler.
Yes, and it's cooler. So it's kind of shifted away from the fall ball or the spring training.
We're about done with our segment, but there's a couple questions I want to make sure that we get at before we close, because I think they're important. Is there anything else that we hadn't touched on as it relates to keeping manufacturing companies and industrial companies competitive?
I would just say, if you're not regularly preaching and working to integrate the lean ideology in your organization, you are already behind, and you need to catch up. Like, we're all counting on you. And a tool in that tool belt is the subject of automation. Again, it goes so far beyond. We're talking like when we're all using automation right here, our phones, there's this, automation is the software and systems that allow us to do our jobs more efficiently. Like, imagine if every single one of these components, like that right there, is 16 different pieces of electronics before the Beatles and the Pink Floyd walked into Abbey Road Studios and invented that device. Its predecessor, like, making music was a very laborious task. And so automation is not just like robots. It's finding ways to do your job more efficiently. The lean ideologies that Jason teaches helps you get there and figure out what to work on. But it costs a lot to be an American. It's expensive to be an American, and like hate it or not, like at the end of the day, like we have to find ways to pay more people more money, make it work for them to come to work. There's less people now working than were before. Our parents,
many people needing
yeah,
opportunities.
yeah. So like our parents are depending on us to work for, so I would say, learn to leverage automation, use people like myself and Jason to figure out where to start. And don't be shy. Like, I mean, as long as you're working with people with a strong resume, like they can prove that they can do what they're saying they can do. Like you'll always get an ROI, even if it's not exactly what you planned for. You'll always have an ROI. I can guarantee you lean is worth every penny. And so wherever that leads you, like it's worth doing. And like, I think that's the center point of the whole conversation, really.
Yeah. And I think to kind of go off what Ian's talked about, like you kind of bring us in, whether it's to take a look at your processes, especially now with the employee shortages and skilled labor shortages and stuff like that, bring us in to take a look at your processes. And as I was saying earlier, a lot of times before we would throw people at the problem. Now you take a look at those processes, and I know right now a lot of people are like, I don't have time for this. Well, bring us in. We'll take a look at your processes, and maybe you can eliminate steps in that process that didn't need to be done before that you added in there. It's through your firefighting or Band-Aid processes. You added an extra step, and a lot of times you never went back because you thought, oh, we don't have that problem anymore. We can take a look and say, hey, you can eliminate this. And instead of doing this with 3 people, you can do it with 2 people, or instead of doing it with 2 people, you can do 1 person, then take that second person or third person and put them elsewhere on something that matters. Or like Ian was saying, I take a look at your process and say it's a redundant task, which that's the one place that a lot of people yes, you have to start somewhere, but a lot of times they get thrown in that redundant task. And 2 or 3 days later, you're putting somebody else in that task because that person quit or just got fed up and just walked out. And a lot of people want a job that they think that they're actually doing something to help the team and help the facility and help the organization, because they want stability and they want to build on that process and be part of the team. They don't want a job where they're sorting screws or sorting nuts or sorting bolts and stuff like that. They want something that they're learning and constantly using their brain and thinking
and they see that the way they're contributing, how that actually makes a difference on behalf of the clients and the customers they serve.
Yes.
So you hear some of those great stories, and I'm losing sight of the name of the companies right now, but the forklift man or woman, and you go up and you say, hey, what's your job? Right. And we would expect them to say, well, I get the boxes from here to there. And instead they're saying, oh, we're changing lives, because we're creating a new mechanism for the heart or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And that's exactly what you're talking about. I love it. The last question then, most impactful technologies that you anticipate coming out in the next 2 to 5 years. What are we looking at?
Factor 4.0 for sure.
What is it?
IoT, the industry of things I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Factor 4, but just the whole concept, like that's kind of the next evolution of the process. I would say, I mean, AI has been around in manufacturing for 20 years. It's nothing new to us. I could speak on that for an hour. Like,
good, come back and do that.
Yeah, so like that.
When Jason has his own show.
Gosh, I don't know.
I think a lot of it's and I know we're doing a lot more as far as having the training for leadership and having the training for the skilled trades and getting people more into that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, everybody has to make a choice as to whether to go to college or go to a trade. And a lot of it is having people go in the right direction instead of only having one bucket for them to go into and understand. And so we have the people to work with the machines because we really are at a deficit with our competitor.
I will say that like it is really easy and I will say cheap, like affordable compared to the old like 5-10 years ago. To like automated solutions. Like I can rattle off 4 people right now that can literally install and commission a robot in your factory, no matter what it's doing, in a week. Like once they get all the parts indoor, and on lead time, supply chain can be an issue. But like once they get everything on site, they are organized, trained, and equipped to get it up and running in a matter of days or weeks. Like nothing you're doing in your factory is new. It's all been done before. So like, and that makes the cost, like the equipment's gotten cheaper, and then the expertise is there. You're not reinventing the wheel. It's like, oh, I did that before. It was shaped like this. We got to get a different tool, but otherwise the rest of the process is exactly the same. So Like the cost has gone down. It's way easy. Like you can get immediate ROI. It's not this big, long, multi-year project. Like if you're working with a pro, that's how you can tell. Like if you're working with a pro, is like they've done it before and they can show you pictures or YouTube videos of a similar application. It's like, oh, you're here, and they can do it. Go ahead.
And then one last thing is that I think that'll change is our supply chain, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think our supply chain will get more localized. We'll get more workers. I know it's a struggle to get workers in the door and people that understand it, but I think, and really that was one of the things back when Lean first started, was they localized a lot of their economy. A lot of their suppliers were local. They literally, and this is one thing I really think here in the United States we need to get out of, is not working together with our suppliers and stuff. A lot of times, growing up in the manufacturing field, I always say you was in a bubble and you weren't allowed to talk with different people, or it was more about dickering on price than it was about solving the problems
and collaboration, finding ways to help each other, which
Silos,
is right, which is what you two have been such a great example of today for us, and the whole idea behind this networking and the way in which you share leads and help. Again, give first, give always. And this has been really a great conversation. I am looking forward to having you come back and explore this more. I have so many ideas running through my mind around how your organization can continue to not only train Lean and help people with leadership, but also change the trajectory of where we're going as a state that's known for manufacturing.
Yes.
Great. How can people get in touch with you? I know you're both on LinkedIn. That's how I think we found you originally, and how you two found each other. But Jason, for you, with Industrial Solutions LLC of Arizona, what is the website?
It is isiworld.net, or you can reach me at JHAINES at isiworld.net. I do say the I because of my accent, just to let everybody know. Or you can call me. I don't know if my phone number is on LinkedIn, but if you email me, I'll typically give you a call back.
Yeah. And in our show notes, when this becomes a podcast today, for those of you who are listening live or watching live on LinkedIn, we'll have everything's hyperlinked for you guys as well. So you're gracious to give us your contact information. And Ian, for you as well, also on LinkedIn as Ian Rush. And then for Summit Electric Supply, how do we get in touch with you there?
Summit.com, SUMMIT.
Easy.
.com. Yep. So
good. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation today. It was certainly extremely informative for me, the novice, but also for the folks who are listening and are interested in getting Lean and connecting with you guys. I'm sure that they're going to walk away going, I need to know these two guys and their organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from Max 6 Entrepreneur Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media leans left and some lean right. We lean manufacturing and Lean. Thanks for listening.